Work on the Victor Hugo Centre is progressing with updated plans and ideas for the project available to read online at vhc.gg. To help progress those plans further and make their dreams a reality, the team, hoping to open the Victor Hugo Centre in St Peter Port, invited the Director Emeritus of Gainsborough House to Guernsey to find out how their centre has developed and to learn lessons from the work in Suffolk, England, to celebrate the life, work and legacy of an artist. That man came in to Express for a chat about his work and his short but busy visit to Guernsey.
I'm Mark Bills. I'm an art historian, curator and director. In terms of director, because being an independent, you take on an institution. You look after the staff there. You develop. You fundraise. You buy works of art. You organise exhibitions. Fundraise. Everything virtually. And have a team with a team, of course, with a team of people that you work with. And the reason I was at Gainsborough House was to really develop the museum, to lead a major change and to take it from the kind of museum it was to the museum that it became. And that was a real joy. And maybe I'm not a peacetime general, if you like. I like to have a project. The project was complete. It was been open for 9 months. It's been a big success in terms of visitor numbers, in terms of getting funding, and as well as the kind of profile that it's got. So seemed a good time to get off. It's always a bit of a moving train, and leaving it in a really good position and real opportunities for it going forward.
So you've got off that moving train, but you're hardly resting. So 4 weeks later, you're here in Guernsey and you've had a very busy visit by the sound of it.
Yeah.
So why were you asked to come over here?
I was asked to come over here by Larry, who came to visit me in Sudbury in January early this year, to share some of my experience of going through a project from the very beginning to its completion. And I was very happy to do that, and I hope that it's been of some help. It would be really nice to see the Victor Hugo Centre develop here.
That's Larry Malchik, I think it's pronounced,
right.
the chair of the
It
Victor
is.
Hugo
That's
Centre
right.
project
Yes.
for Guernsey. Did you and Larry know each other then before his visit to you
No,
in January?
I knew of his work, and
Okay.
the Church of War Rooms was a great success and a very good museum and museum experience. So I knew of some of the things that he'd done, but I'd never met him before. And he'd visited because it had lots of parallels with what was being planned for the Victor Hugo Centre. So it's a great pleasure to show him around and to talk to him about the project and what we've been doing and the challenges and how we overcame those challenges. And he said, and then we kept in touch. And he said, well, would you like to visit Guernsey? And as I'd never been to the Channel Islands, I thought, actually, it would be really rather nice. Yeah.
So when Larry told you then about his vision for the Victor Hugo
Yes.
Centre in Guernsey, what were your first thoughts?
Well, it's
achievable?
Great. Yeah, absolutely achievable, a great project. And projects, I think, that aren't easy, though. Projects that aren't easy, but also have really can have a really positive impact on places. And I think that's important, and that was one of the aims of the project at Gainsborough House. Wasn't just it had its mission about Gainsborough and stimulating people being able to respond to Gainsborough, but also to stimulate creativity, all those things that we wanted to do, its mission, but we also wanted to make sure that it would be secure financially going forward.
Yeah.
And that it would have an impact on the town, because it's right in the centre of a town which is around 30,000 people. Okay. But that's relatively small in the UK.
Yeah.
But and it's a very rural county, Suffolk. It has this amazing artistic heritage. Constable and Gainsborough were born within 12 miles of each other, and the landscape that you see was the one that they grew up with and knew. Yeah. And it has this extraordinary sense of place, and people look at the place through the eyes of those artists. That's and it needed somewhere to be a hub and a centre for all that, and that's what Gainsborough's has. Similarly, the idea that a writer like Victor Hugo and how he used Guernsey and inspired the people will see the place through the eyes of the writer. And I think that could be a real hub for cultural activity and for understanding. So all those things have lots of parallels. And we've seen the positive impact that that's had on the town. It's brought, it was a slightly declining town. It's a beautiful town, but it was on the slight decline. It's had an impact. The town themselves felt that cultural tourism was a way forward. But that's all very well, but you need a destination for that, and that was one of the things it was about. I mean, ironically, Suffolk being this sort of artist county, is that there's no real places, art galleries that you can go to, so we wanted to create that place. I mean, one of the artists we've been working with is Maggie Hamlin, and she always said about Suffolk, tells us a joke of there are two rats in a Suffolk sewer. And one says to the other, do you know the alarming thing is at any one point you're within 6 feet of an artist? So it's a very artist county, but there aren't the places really for artists to exhibit. And that was another one of our aims, really, that we could be a kind of a visual arts centre as well as, but we don't neglect Gainsborough. There's a gallery devoted to him and the house and everything. But we wanted, as well as having the historic house, to have this, exhibition centre and place, and also learning centre for activities and things. And I think that's another parallel too, because you've this Hauteville house, which is a historic house, which isn't going to change, because it can't. It's wonderful as it is. But, so it's good to have kind of activity and interpretation of all that in another place. Yeah.
It sounds like the inspiration of upcoming artists or future artists is a big part of Gainsborough House and your work.
It is.
And that's one of the things that's planned for the Victor Hugo Centre. From my understanding is that it's going to be very immersive, and there's going to be, as well as obviously exhibitions of Hugo's work and a focus on his work, but also opportunities to encourage creativity.
And I think, there's so much, because, Hugo's ideas as well as his novels and everything, that the scope for making connections with lots of artists and different things is enormous.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important that any space has a freedom to do, to be able to do lots of different things, really. And of course things change, the world changes and everything. And it's keeping up with that, finding things that are exciting at the time and the moment. And there's got to be that flexibility so that it can respond to that.
You mentioned earlier on about Gainsborough House, I think ensuring it was economically viable.
Yeah.
And that is obviously one of the question marks over Victor Hugo House.
Yeah.
And I know there's lots of work going on by Larry and his team to get the finances in place.
Yes.
But it's a big ask, isn't it? But,
it is.
But there is that financial return then once that investment is made that you've seen in Sudbury.
There is. And, that's the thing that mustn't be forgotten. It does have a very positive impact economically, certainly with cultural tourism. But one of the aims was to make it so it will go on, so it doesn't need to. We don't need to raise £10 million every year. Well, obviously we couldn't, but we created within it a shop and cafe and things as well. There's those things that will generate income, which is important, and it's important in terms of planning to be thinking about that. It's not, it's happened with lottery projects. Are very nervous about that, quite rightly. They've funded projects, which then once they're done, they haven't got the money to run it. And clearly, with his experience, Larry's going into that with eyes open and planning something that will be sustainable going forward, which is really important, because it's not state funded. Maybe get state support, as we did. We got public support, but we don't get an annual amount from the government. But it is that kickstart is what's needed.
And there's been lots of kind of commentary on Victor Hugo over many, many years, but more recent years, that Guernsey hasn't made the most at times of our connections with Hugo. I think it was when the big Hollywood production of Les Miserables came out.
Oh, yes.
And it was like, we really need to be capitalising on this.
Yes.
A chunk of that was written here, and The Toilers of the Sea and other works, obviously. Yeah. So it's just kind of nurturing those connections and
Yes.
promoting them,
Yeah.
but nurturing them and kind of working with them.
Huge potential, I think, and the connections, people, even if they don't know too much about Hugo to begin with, often know about the sort of like Les Mis and the Hunchback and all those people know that, even if they don't know too much about Victor Hugo. But it's got huge opportunity, and you need a centre for that opportunity, and that's what I think the Victor Hugo Centre represents.
So while you've been here, are you able to tell us what you've been up to? Who have you been meeting with?
I mean, mainly, I need to come back and see more of Guernsey.
Yes,
it's a
please
beautiful
do.
place, and as I read, it's always sunny, and it is. So
But yes,
it's been beautiful.
Yeah.
I gave a presentation to a group of people about my experiences at Gainsborough House. I've also been meeting the directors of the Victor Hugo Centre, and we've been talking about things like fundraising and about business planning, and going through that, sharing my experience of those with them, and talking to them about the challenges that they face here and how they're approaching it and everything, and they seem remarkably switched on, and I'm sure it will be a very good project.
Aside from Victor Hugo, Guernsey has a very strong creative sector and identity. There's lots of very talented artists across all kind of spheres. Have you had much chance to experience any of that?
No.
Another reason to come again.
This afternoon I'm looking forward to going to see the museum and gallery. So I'm looking forward to that. I haven't had a chance as yet, but clearly it's one can see that that's something that's very very important here.
And I think I'm right in saying that creativity breeds creativity, doesn't it?
It does.
So
absolutely,
like
and I do also think the great artists and writers do really stimulate creativity, and actually also give us that different view of the world. Just give us that extra, which is really important and valuable, and really adds to life, and that celebration of that is really really important. People find their creative sides, and I think there's no doubt that museums and galleries can be part of that process.
Once you've gone back to the UK, you're no longer working at Gainsborough House. No. What is next for you?
Well, what's next for me is going back to where I started. I'm going back to a research project. So I'm working on a research project on a Victorian artist I've been working on for many years, and that I'm looking forward to putting together a book on the artist. And at the moment I've been going through his voluminous correspondence, which has been very fascinating.
Thank you for listening to The Interview, a Bailiwick Express podcast. If you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe. You can find us on all social media channels, and if you'd like to keep up to date on all the work the Express team does, please sign up to our daily email by visiting gsy.bailiwickexpress.com.